Let's go ahead and do an exercise. So for this exercise, I need you to number a paper from 1 to 18, and then as I read each word will be an adjective. I want you to circle the number if the word that I read that is associated with it describes you. So you'll just be going down the line. You don't write anything down, just circle the numbers. Don't write down the word. Do not write down the word. Just circle the number if that word describes you. Okay, so I'm going to read the words reasonably quickly, and so if you need to stop or come back, feel free to do that, but do not write down any words. Okay, number 1, forceful. 2, quiet. 3, generous. 4, dominant. 5, tender. 6, loyal. 7, independent. 8, compassionate. 9, adaptable. 10, courageous. 11, cheerful. 12, secretive. 13, principled. 14, romantic. 15, responsible. 16, dynamic. 17, forgiving. 18, careful. Okay, so that was the first phase, and all you've done at this point is circle the numbers of the words that you feel like describe you. You have not written any words down. If you've written words down, then this isn't going to work as a good demonstration. So now what I need you to do is cover up those circled numbers. So you can fold the paper in half or something so that you don't see those circled numbers. And now what you're going to do is write down as many of the words as you can remember in any order. So this is the free recall phase. Now what I'd like to ask you to do is to pause me for about 30 seconds while you recall as many of the words as you can in any order. Go. All right, so hopefully you have written down all the words that you can remember in any order. So now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to check whether the words that you wrote down are all ones that were actually on the list. So this is going to be a little bit tricky. You're going to have to look at your list of words that you generated and then compare them to this table and give yourself credit for any that you correctly recalled. So go through and check yourself to see which of these words you correctly recalled. Okay, so hopefully you're back and done from doing that. All right, so now what you want to do is create a couple of columns next to the words that you free recalled. So if it's on your list of things that you wrote down, you already have a check mark in the recalled column basically because you wrote it down, so obviously you remembered it. Now what we want to know is whether the word that you wrote down is one that you had also circled as being descriptive of yourself. So now this is going to require you to compare the word that you recalled. Let's say that you remembered, you wrote down the word tender, let's say. So now what you have to do is look on the chart that's on the screen, see that tender is word number 5. Look at your list of numbers that you circled and see if you have number 5 circled. If you do, then you have recalled a word that describes yourself. If you didn't circle number 5, then you have recalled a word that doesn't describe yourself. So you're going to do that for every word that you recalled. You're going to check and see what number it was on the list, check to see whether you circled that number. If it was descriptive of yourself, put a mark. If you circled it on the first pass, then you give yourself a mark that it was descriptive of yourself. If it was not descriptive, if you didn't circle that number on the first pass, then don't mark it. So that what you'll end up with is a list of words that you free recalled, and you'll have marked those that were also descriptive of yourself. All right, so get that done, get them all marked, and then come on back. All right, so hopefully you've got that all done now, and what we're going to do is move to the next phase. So make a little table that looks like this. So on the top, it says recalled, and you have either yes or no. So what we're working on right now is just those that you free recalled. So those are all the yeses. Then you have the self-descriptives. Yes would be all the ones that were circled. No would be all the ones that weren't circled. What you're going to put in that top left box, so yes recalled, yes self-descriptive, would be all those words that you recalled that you had also circled the number for when we did the first pass. So just that little subset of I recalled it and it was self-descriptive goes in that little box. The box below it is you recalled it, but you hadn't circled its number on the first pass, so you didn't consider it self-descriptive. So write how many, so in the top left box, you're going to write down how many words you recalled that were also self-descriptive. In the box below it, you'll write down how many words you recalled that were not self-descriptive. All right. The next columns are created by looking at this chart, finding all the words that you did not recall, and then distinguishing those that you had circled as descriptive of yourself versus those that you had not circled. So that's your next step, is to go through and find all the words on this. And you don't have to necessarily record what the word is, but you have to just count up how many words that you did not recall were self-descriptive. So how many of these words did you have a circle around the number, but you didn't free recall it when it was time to do that? That number will go in the lower right box. So you didn't recall it and it wasn't descriptive, so there was no circle around it. That you write down how many words fit that category. And then in the upper right box, you didn't recall it, but it was self-descriptive. So there was a circle around the number, but you didn't write the word down when you did the free recall task. So this is a kind of complicated design with the intention of trying to figure out whether you actually remembered more words that described yourself than words that didn't describe yourself. So if all you have is that left column completed for the yes, I recalled it, and was it self-descriptive or not, you should get pretty good information about whether you are more likely to remember words that were self-descriptive or not. For most of us, we remember more words that describe ourselves than words that don't describe us. We're less likely to forget words that describe us than we are to forget the ones that don't describe us. This is part of our self-concept, our understanding of ourselves. And so if it fits our self-schema, if it goes along with how we see ourselves, it's much easier to retrieve that information because schemas are well organized. And so if it's attached to our self-schema, then we'll be able to find that information more readily when we're asked to retrieve it. Our self-schema, like I said earlier, is our most powerful schema. It's the one that is the most detailed. We have the greatest access to it. And so a lot of the time in the research that's been conducted on this particular design, most people recall more words that are self-descriptive than words that are not self-descriptive. And they're less likely to forget words that are self-descriptive than words that are not. So that's kind of just an interesting little demonstration of how we can know how elaborate a person's self-schema is and how we can know how people organize information around their self-concept. All right, well, back to how we manage our self-esteem. In this slide, I wanted to talk about things that we do to present ourselves as a person who is worthy of other people's esteem, and as a result of trying to present that, we give the impression that we have high self-esteem. So self-presentation is what we're talking about here. So exemplification, that refers to the idea that you compare yourself to other people who you have high regard for and that you think that you are, comparable to. So if you're a basketball player and you say, I want to be as great as Michael Jordan, right? That would be an example of I'm making a very favorable comparison between myself and someone else. trying to show other people that I think pretty highly of my skills, right? That I think pretty highly of myself. Now, it might not be that I think in general highly of myself. Maybe I'm just trying to project that I think well of my basketball playing skills. But one way or another, I'm managing my self-esteem by comparing myself to someone who other people hold in high regard. Intimidation is another way that we can present ourselves as somebody who is worthy of high esteem and that holds high self-esteem. We can try and make other people feel weaker around us, have other people feel like we must be better than them. And that way they don't challenge our self-esteem. They don't try and see whether they're actually better than us at something. We try and intimidate them and make them feel like it would be, worthless to try and better us. So intimidation. Supplication is sort of the flip, where it's like, oh no, I'm not a challenge to you. I'm fine. You guys, you all know what you're doing, and I just got here. That kind of, we're going to learn this term later in class, sandbagging, where you kind of manage other people's expectations through supplication by acting like they're better than we are, is actually a way to inflate our own self-esteem, to make ourselves feel better about ourselves, because we can say, well, wow, I thought they knew more than I did. I thought they had been doing this longer. I thought, but look, I did just as well as they did. Look at that. I actually am better than I thought I was. So by setting the bar really super low and acting like kind of we're sucking up to other people and those kinds of things, we can actually emerge feeling better about ourselves because we did better than we were presenting ourselves as being able to do. The last one is what we call self-handicapping. And I found a cartoon that you guys should relate to this because you're students, right? Exam Friday, you studying? Nah, night before is all I need. What's the point? I'm going to fail anyway, the person's actually thinking. Want to join our study group? Later, I don't want to overstudy. Then he thinks, I'm so going to fail. C minus, all right, not bad for one night of studying, right? So with self-handicapping, we put roadblocks in front of ourselves so that we have a ready-made explanation if we fail, right? Well, I didn't even study. But we also have the success if we manage to do decently well in spite of our roadblocks. So look, I got C minus without even studying, not bad, right? Look how smart I am because I was able to do so well without even studying. Self-handicapping is really a trap. And I mean, I really believe that most of us do this. I know for me, I have a long and glorious history of self-handicapping to give myself, and you do it completely unconsciously. I only know that I did it now in retrospect. I look back and say, had I put my entire effort into something, I probably could have done better than, let's say, the C minus, right? I could have done better. But I didn't want to take that full risk, because here's what self-handicapping does for us. If we put our full effort into something and then we fail, our self-esteem is going to take a hit and we're going to feel bad and we're going to think, man, I put my full effort in and it wasn't good enough. Right? That hurts your self-esteem. Whereas if you say, I held a little bit back and did well enough, or maybe even did really well, right? Sometimes it's just pure luck that you end up doing fine, even though you didn't do anything to make it possible for you to do fine. So we can hold a little bit back to give us an excuse for why we don't do as well as we probably could have done if we had put our full effort in. It seems like a great strategy, doesn't it? It really would protect your self-esteem to always manage, it that way by always holding a little bit back. Then we never have really fully given a full effort, and that way we never really have to feel completely badly that we didn't do well. But the farther along you go in life, you start to realize, well, if I'm always holding a little bit back, I'm always going to get a little bit less than maybe I could if I put my whole effort in. And I got to tell you, I have put my full effort into things and failed, and it hurts. But you know what? I got to say, it doesn't hurt that much more than putting a partial effort in and then wondering if I could have actually achieved more. Like, that actually hurts more to me, the times that I've sold myself short. And so I would just like to really strongly recommend that you sort of assess things that you might do or be doing that might be roadblocks that you've placed in front of yourself to make it just a little bit harder. And we always say, I'm not trying to make it harder. I mean, I'm not thinking that you're going to consciously say to yourself, I'm doing it to make myself, to make it harder on myself. But, for example, I've had students who have said, I'm in my last 2 quarters of school and I can't bear to live at home anymore. So I've moved into my own apartment, which now has all these other pressures and difficulties. And this is why I actually am late on my assignment or something like that. I have to work more hours or, these kinds of things. And it's like, okay, literally you were 2 quarters away and that's the moment when you decided you just couldn't do it anymore. I mean, I'm not talking about people who are in abusive situations or something like that. I'm talking about people who are like, I'm 22 years old and you should be treating me like an adult kinds of attitudes. My daughter went through it when she was a senior in college and she was just determined that she wanted to go live closer to campus and do all these things. And just to make it impossible for her to self-handicap like that, I said, well, you're going to have to pay your own rent because I had never budgeted for my kids to be going to live on campus, that's for sure. So I said, well, if you can afford it. And she was like, never mind, because she couldn't. But it was classic that what she was trying to do in that last little run into the finish line was act like the thing that was making her life the worst is that, she had to commute and all the, struggles that are involved in that. I did the same thing when I was an undergraduate. I had to live at home to go to school too. And it was not the school wasn't in my neighborhood. I had to drive, 20 miles in Orange County traffic. And I thought the same thing. Oh, I should get an apartment. And it was really just like this sort of self-handicapping thing. Like everything was going fine. Why would I put that added stressor on myself? Because now I have to make rent and all the things that have to go along with that, find a roommate, all those kinds of things. It's a way to kind of hold back a little bit and not put your full energy in those last moments where now maybe we're asking more of you in classes and other kinds of things where it's kind of gotten a little bit harder and it's that last bit. So watch yourself as you're going through life and think, do I really need to make this big structural change right now? Or am I doing it for some other reason, right? Like, am I challenged in some other part of my life? And that's why I'm putting this roadblock ahead of myself right now. So I just wanted you guys to be aware of self-handicapping. And, if you can nip it in the bud younger than I did it, I mean, it took me into my 30s to recognize I was doing it so much. So if you guys could stave that off, the sky's the limit for what you could actually achieve. All right, let's go ahead and take a break here and we will come back and talk about some other principles that have to do with our self-concept.